England, and I work with Gateway as a youth mentor, and I participate in the Youth Coalition. And so tonight, I want to thank everyone for joining us, taking time out of your schedules and helping us lead this discussion right now. We are very thankful for that. I want to remind everyone that we are broaching a very sensitive topic, so I ask that we all please remain respectful and conscious of everyone's opinions and experiences that we all have, because they are all very different, but they do have the potential to be very similar. And for me, the main goal this evening is to start a conversation about this broad topic. So I hope to focus on like perceptions and just raising awareness about youth incarceration this evening and how we can fight that. So to start, we can introduce ourselves. You can say where you're from, whatever. You can say something a little bit about yourself, or feel free to share why you chose to join us today. Whoever wants to start can start.
Hi, my name is Amran. I'm a part of the Youth Coalition. I'm from Lewiston, and I decided to be a part of this topic because it's important and very pressing.
Hi, my name is Sudi. I'm also a student at USM. I'm majoring in education. So I think discussing the prison systems and youth incarceration is a very important topic, especially to learn about and understand how our social systems work in this country and what we can do to improve them.
Hi, I'm Brandon Crawford Adams, and I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I'm a junior sports management major at the University of New England. And I chose to be a part of this conversation, one, because just like as an African American male in the United States, I feel like it's super important for people like me to be informed, and just helping out a friend as well.
Hi, my name is Mana. I'm from Lewiston, and I've kind of just been involved in this work on a very small scale compared to some folks I know who are very directly involved in this. So Abbas asked me to come on this, and I agreed. So here I am. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Mario. I'm from Portland, and I honestly joined because I'm studying criminal justice right now in at SMCC. So and then Abbas asked me, so it was pretty interesting to like see what everybody has to say. So
Thank you all. Sophia, do you want to say anything, or are you all set?
I am. I'm just so happy to have this space for all of us. We are, Black and brown young people who are really affected by the criminal justice system. There's a lot of injustice going on. So I think it's very important to create spaces that are safe and comfortable for BIPOC youth. And this is one of many that will be coming. So yeah, again, I also want to quickly share that you don't have to be an expert on this topic. We definitely are not experts. We are here to share our opinions, our personal experiences, whether that's indirect or direct, share our perspectives on youth incarceration, and hopefully shed light on this because it affects a lot of minority communities.
Awesome, thank you. So I guess I can say the reason that I chose to be here today is because I have had indirect experiences with law enforcement and youth incarceration, and I've just always been kind of watching it happen, and I've never really had the opportunity, I guess, to do anything about it. So I decided to take it. So to start the discussion this evening, if anyone has anything to say. Oh, Abbas just joined us. Abbas, do you want to give yourself a little introduction?
Yes, I will. Hello, guys. Sorry for the little delay. My name is Abbas. I'm the co-host with Reddit today on this topic of youth incarceration. I go to USM. I'm studying health sciences, and I'm part of the youth coalition that is formed by Gateway. So yeah, I'm gonna be here to. All right, let me get on that. Sorry, guys, I just had a couple technical difficulties with my computer and internet. So let me pull up the information. Rada, you can go ahead and start that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so to start, our first question is if anyone wants to share their experiences, whether indirect or direct, or do you know or have any family or friends who have been mistreated by the legal system? Feel free to share what you wish.
I think just watching and hearing stories about youth and like how school shapes them into like there's this whole system where Black youth are go to school and they're suspended, and like systems and like the prison pipeline, like I haven't directly like experienced it, but being able to like hear stories from people or like seeing people that I grew up with go through this, where it starts as punishments from schools such as suspensions or small incidents, and it leads them to being in places like Long Creek or being arrested, and it's like a cycle. And like prison has become like a modern day oppression and slavery for Black men, and their culture and identity and their reality and narrative has been like it's been imposed on them for many years, and like it's been turned on them now. And it I like had seen a statistic that said that more than 3 million students a year are being suspended, and that 250,000 are being referred to police by their schools, which shows that like this whole system starts in schools, which leads to youth incarceration. And Black youth are 5 times more likely to be detained or committed compared to white youth. So it starts young.
You definitely see it early. Just like speaking of my own like personal experience, like going to youth programs, whether it be like child development centers or like just after school programs in general. Like if they view you as like any type of bad seed, they just kind of weed you from like being productive as a child at that age. And like I see some of my friends, like they got in trouble early, because like they would get kicked out of all the cool like after school opportunities just from like one incident. And like it would be unfair to them personally, just like speaking like from my own perspective. But at the same time, it's just like, how can we like fix those problems without like trying to create more opportunities for those kids to get out?
Hi everybody, this is Mana again. I guess I'll share a little bit. I've kind of been just going around the justice system in terms of, particularly the juvenile system. I should share, I think, a little bit of background as well. I graduated from UMF 2018, worked at the DA office for about a year and a half, just 2 years actually, because I internship for about a year prior to that. So I got a first hand to just kind of see. I did not work. I have to say that I didn't work on the kids team, but I was within the area of it to kind of see what was happening firsthand. And prior to that, I had a bump with the system, just like many people here kind of sharing. So since like a couple years now, I've seen firsthand kind of what the system can do, should do, and refuse to do. So from that lens, I think just kind of being a standby, someone as just mentioned earlier on, of what to do and what not to do, and also knowing firsthand a lot of people who have served time, a lot of people who have served time when they were young. So with all that combination and what's happening now in 2020 with all of the Black Lives Matter and everything that's happening, I think it just kind of brings forth to the forefront of everything else. So yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they would like to add?
Hi guys, Sudi here. Just kind of going off of what Mana said, what kind of comes to mind is like an old but kind of famous statistic where African Americans represent about 46.3% of the population, and that was in 2011, which prison population, and that was in 2011. But that same year, the US Census reported that African Americans and Blacks are only 12.8% of the US population. So being 46.3% of the prison population there kind of shows a very big disparity, and it just shows that something's clearly disproportionate in the criminal justice system and how it works overall. And it's kind of a system that specifically targets African Americans and Blacks. If you think back to the days of slavery and Jim Crow, bless you. It's a system implemented with embedded racism and discrimination for a reason, because obviously there's that history there of slavery and Jim Crow. And the difference in sentencing for nonviolent offenses, especially like, what'd you say, drug-related offenses between Blacks and whites, just speaks for itself. But nobody really wants to be a statistic here or talk about statistics, but the racial disparity is pretty clear. This criminal justice system is broken. It's built from racist and discriminatory laws, which is pretty plain to see, I think.
Thank you, Sudi. Just going off what you said, this is open to all the panelists. How do you feel with your community's law enforcement? Have they treated minorities like different? Do you have you seen it? Have you experienced it? You guys would like to share that?
Just to make sure, you said law enforcement.
Yeah, law enforcement. Yep.
So I would say personally, I've experienced it like firsthand a couple times in San Antonio. I just feel like how they treat people of color, like just walking up to the door is different. Like when I compare myself to like situations my friends say like, oh, I got pulled over and I got let go for this, and just like they walk me through the scenario, and then like I compare it for me, like, you know, I have a clean car, there's nothing wrong, I'm doing the speed limit, you know, I get asked to step out my car and have my entire, you know, car searched. And like at a young age, like I was 17 when that happened. Like I didn't really know my like laws, so I kind of just got out the car. You know, I sat in the cold because it was like 40 degrees outside, and I waited as this man searched my car for 20 minutes, and like I videotaped it and showed my dad, and he was like, "You just got out the car, like you didn't do anything wrong, you just got out the car." And it's just like, it shows like they were already willing to try to do the most to see what they could get out of the situation, versus like, you know, telling me what I did wrong, you know, any of those things. Like I wasn't afforded any of those opportunities. So, and that was my first like deal with, you know, police. Like I had only had my license for a year, so happened to me per se. And so like when it does, it definitely is like a reality shock. And then so I definitely like push for us to continue to do things like this, to, you know, get out the word, and find solutions to like problems we have in the everyday.
Thanks, Brandon.
Hi again. Sorry. Like going off what Brandon was saying, like personally, I was working with Scarborough PD for a while, as an intern, and like doing traffic stops and like stopping people or even like going to doors. when we get a call, whatever. Like it was different depending on who the person was and their skin color. Even the officers themselves, like sometimes I would drive with like a black officer, or I would drive with a female officer. So it depended on the scenarios. Like there was one occasion where we went to I think the deeper end of like the woods, and it was like there was a call and stuff, and then we go there, and the first reaction, like not even just that the police gave off, but the people that like we went to gave off was like absolutely like weird. And I was being looked at weird as why I was sitting in like the passenger seat of like a police car, and like why I was sitting there, or like why I was even present at the moment. And then the officers were also very nice to the like white people that we were getting calls from, or like we were pulling over. Like there was a lot of communication between them, rather than the black people that they were pulling over, or like seeing like there was time where a taxi driver was pulled over. There was a lot of hesitance and a lot of miscommunication and aggression between them, rather than a cut and dry thing of like, oh hi, how's your day going? But rather it was like, hi, can I see your ID? Can I see your license? Do you know why you got pulled over? And like more aggressive on that end, rather than being like chill with it and like going like step by step and like treating them like an actual person, I'd say.
Going off of that, there's this project called the Marshall Project, and I was just reading it recently. It's a nonprofit organization that's about criminal justice, and it mentioned that just about 6% of the U.S. population serve in the military, but about 19% of police officers are former veterans. So that means that these individuals actually go overseas, or they might not be necessarily like going overseas to serve, but they are in the military. That means that they have gotten actual military training. So when these individuals come back to do civilian work, if you will, they're still very much trained as combative individual. And when they see a threat, that is precisely how, or when they are interacting in any situation, they see these individuals as a hostage or something along that line, right? They're in combative mind. And when you're in combative mind, it's harder for you to, I'm not a psych major, but to my understanding, it's harder for you to rationalize that as just being someone having conversation with you rather than someone who's trying to actually hurt you. So, and there's a whole range of cultural differences, obviously, for white individuals versus the black individual, immigrant versus just African American. So with all of that nuance, and no one really taking the appropriate training and time to digest as well as break it apart for these officers. I mean, it's disaster in the making if you think about it, right? These veterans are coming back often with severe PTSD, and I'm not a defending police officer. I'm just trying to give a larger picture of what's happening here. The fact that we're setting up both parties to fail, and when these things happen, I mean, if you design a disaster, you expect a disaster, right? So I think to me that has to be the one of the things that we have to consider is the fact that like 19% of police officers are veterans. So.
And that's a tough stat to look at though, because you know, like both of my parents are in the military, not by any means. I feel like my dad was actually a military police officer, like within the military, so a little different, because you know, like they're not policing like civilians or anything, more like they deal with I guess whatever happens on the base, domestic violence issues generally and stuff like that. But it's tough because not everyone has the same level of training in the army and in the military. So like when you bring out a stat like that, it's just like there are people who serve in the medical field and then become police officers. There are people who, you know, like my dad, he after he did was a police officer, he became special forces. So like they, you know, like you could argue that for him. He did come home with PTSD. He knows what that feels like. He knows what like misjudging a situation because you're used to being in such high pressure. But that case is not for everyone. So like it is tough.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's why I don't know if you heard me, but I said again, one doesn't mean necessarily that every veteran has served overseas. And two, what I was trying to get at the whole rant I made was environmental conditioning matters. So when you take somebody from one environment and you train them to do certain things and you put them in a different one, or they choose to be in a different one, but there was no adjustment, no accommodation made, and um, no resources were provided for them to actually have a comprehension of what is happening, who they're serving, then again, we're designing for disasters to happen. That was just my general point of it.
And oh, sorry, this is Sudi. And I think environment is kind of like a very good point to make there, because when you discuss youth incarceration, you kind of think of who is being incarcerated. And it's like African American children at the point like before they're adults under 18. These are vulnerable children. And I think these systems that we have, like the child welfare system or like the environment that these kids grow up in, these systems need to be reformed to support and protect these vulnerable children. Black children that have been shown to historically receive neglect and exclusion from certain communities where they feel like they have to turn to, I don't know, some sort of crime or like the wrong people. And these are vulnerable children. They just need to be like treated in a certain way where they can reform themselves, and these programs to protect the African American family and reduce the incarcerated population overall, that would more solve the problem instead of like looking at, oh, these police officers are have a veteran background, blah blah blah. But obviously, like police brutality is huge. Like it's a huge problem. But who are they targeting at this point? It's the vulnerable Black African American young adults that are being incarcerated at a much higher rate than any other ethnic group. So it's kind of like, where is this problem coming from? It's their environment, and what systems do they have to protect them?
Yeah, kind of going off of that and bringing it a little bit background to a personal experience. I grew up in northern Maine, and I'm not Black, I'm Hispanic. My father's side of the family is Puerto Rican, and one time we were on our way to a basketball game, and my mother's white, and she was pulled over because her inspection ran out, like some normal issue, and my father was in her passenger seat, and they asked for his ID because he matched a description or something like that. And I don't obviously don't remember the details because I was little, but that's always been something. Anytime I see blue lights, I'm like, oh my goodness, like what could this mean? And it doesn't, yes, it certainly targets Black and colored youth way more disproportionately than white, and but like it just goes to show that not everyone had to come from a violent or direct experience background, and it still sticks with you. So yeah.
I would like to add on something as well. I had seen this video of this little kid. I would assume probably 7 to 10 years old. He was playing basketball, in the driveway, and a police car, drove by. He hit himself behind like the court. You know, Fear is built within the minorities, children, the youth especially is built in from like a young age, and that fear is built out throughout their youth, and that's one of the reasons why you see all this youth, they don't like to be open, they don't like to interact with officers because they have this fear of being stereotyped or profiled. They actually was probably afraid of being stereotyped as being the officer was probably going to come over to him asking if he was trespassing, because the neighborhood looked like it was like a good neighborhood, so these profiling, all this stigma, and all this stereotyping, that's what does happen, and it happens from a young age. That goes right into our next question, if I would like to ask. I mean, Rena, you want to ask that question?
No, go ahead.
All right. So what do you think the overall like the superstition or stigma is surrounding incarcerated youth? So they touched a little bit on it. In Maine or nationwide, that could mean like your community, your culture, how is how do your culture or your community view when the kids go into the system? Are they welcome? Are they not? Can we have anybody can add on to that?
Yeah, and to add on to that, maybe in particular Long Creek, that is a interesting topic, I guess we could say. I know there's a lot of youth that go there and they come out not the same kid that went there before, and when they come out, some of them are still children. So if anyone has anything to say about that, please feel free.
Abbas, I didn't catch the question. What can you just maybe rephrase it, or
Yes, I can rephrase
or maybe I
that.
just
So the
didn't
question,
hear it well.
my
Yeah,
bad. It could
thank
be
you. No,
the
no, you're
connection
good.
as well. So the question is, how does your community or your culture view incarcerated youth? Are they welcome? Are they not? How do they view? Because I'm sure you've heard of the stigma when kids or the youth are in like gangs or like they get stuck in the system. They are the community distance themselves from. How do you view that? Is the your view different? And everybody every community is different. How they accept kids who are incarcerated. Is that a little clear, man? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, so basically, obviously, it's every community is going to look down upon the kid. Like, it's just common sense. Like, that's just a natural instinct. Obviously, he went to jail or he went to an incarceration. It's just, he got incarcerated, whatever. It's just, people are going to look down upon it. And, like, at least speaking for some of the Somali communities and Somali community members I know, initially, it is a bad thing. And it comes out as it being like, oh, this child is not well, like cared for, or the parents are terrible, or it goes back to attacking his family and his background and the way he grew up initially. And it kind of will set the child back in a lot of ways, thinking that, okay, my family is being looked down upon due to what I did, or I'm not enough because the way I'm being looked at right now, or being told constantly, you did something wrong. Like you can't achieve anything in your life basically at a constant rate. And then within even the general community, like the general population, and like being out in your normal environment, people are going to look down upon you. You can't find a job due to your record, or you can't find you can't find you can't fit with certain groups of people because you have a record or you did something wrong. So, and that does take a toll on the kids' mental and like physical health initially, thinking that, okay, I can't achieve anything, so might as well just, I already messed up, let me just mess up completely. Like there's no point in me coming back from it. And a lot of times that is what happens and what ends up throwing the kids off like the tracks, and like keeping them from actually achieving something good, even though they can, and these kids are smart and like well educated kids, but due to like society and the way they look down upon these kids, it will divert them from the actual path that they're supposed to go on, and like keeping them from getting the chance to actually do something good for themselves initially.
To kind of add on to that, I have some friends who experience pretty much what you just described is what they experience. It's, oh, these people say these things about me, or these people think that they know this about me, so no one wants to talk to me, no one wants to hang out with me at school, like my brother did this or my sister did that, like, and so these kids are walking the hallways with their heads already down because of something that their brother that might be 1, 2, maybe 10 years older than them did, but that still affects them, especially here in Maine in our like small communities, and word spreads quickly and the word sticks kind of. So
As I mentioned, I hope we get to talk a little bit about, because the justice or the juvenile system is a lot larger than just the police department. It's just a lot larger than just the cultural factors and things like that. The primary factor is actually the prosecutor, the district attorney's office, and I hope we get the chance to actually unpack that a little bit. But I was saying that I worked at the DA office, and there would be times where I would be at the front desk, and that means that people would come in and out. People would come in to pay their restitution, which means the damage they have caused, and the judge have signed that they pay certain amount every month, every weekly, whatever the agreement was. And there were times where a lot of Somali kids or young Somali individuals, typically, or a person of color, will come through and they pay their fines, and they see me there. Right, the first initial shock is like, oh shit, like what is she doing here? And then the second one is, oh no, she knows. So right, so and I think often than not, I'm like, hey, I'm not assigned to get, like, I don't only know your name because I'm pulling up right now, so I don't know anything about you. And I hope that gives the impression, but I could see even behind the glass the amount of shame that these kids are carrying on their shoulders, because they're just waiting for that comment. They're just waiting for someone to say, look at them, to throw in their life away. So they expect that comment. They're expecting it. They're waiting for it, and you can see from their shoulder that they immediately start relaxing when you make no comment. And I'm like, hey, I'm just here to collect your restitution. That's it. And I hope you don't miss your payment, because that means you're going back. So, but even from that class, that you can see the amount of weight these kids are carrying, and often than not, it's ridiculous amount of things that they have even gotten into trouble to begin with. Look, when you start looking over their charges and things like that. So the shame is it knows no bound, even with these kids. And I think often than not, moral supremacy, the moral superiority is incredible power that we all have. And I think a lot of the time we don't take the time to really look at. That's why we don't like homeless people. That's why we don't like people who we perceive to have deficiencies, right? And individuals who have been part of the justice system or the juvenile system falls to the same category as everything, everything along with anything else. And so anything to protect our moral superiority is for us, I think, as society, well worth doing. So that's just me, I think.
I think that there's a stigma around people who've been formally convicted. And as Mana said, there's this shame around that. So they're not able to, like youth are not able to just go along with their life after they've technically paid their debt to society or whatever you call it. So it places a barrier between them and the rest of society, and they're not able to grow, and they don't have this positive intervention that they should be having, and they don't have the support of their community, which leads to them just going back to this vicious cycle. Did you say something?
Yeah, just going off of what Amran said, like, yeah, I totally agree with that. And just to add to that, I think mass incarceration has obviously had profound effects on the family life and how people interact and communicate with their family, how they love their family, and just family dynamics overall. So if someone in your family is incarcerated, you have kind of one or two ways to go there. Like either you stay and you support them, or you say, oh, that's your life, your decision, your path, and you kind of separate. But I think there just kind of needs to be a movement for social investment in the urban poor and like people that really don't have anything, and their first path is kind of like Amna said, the prison pipeline, because they're kind of going in that way and their life just continues to deteriorate. But like I said, I think the family life is obviously and profoundly affected by this mass incarceration that we have going on.
Can I just
Yes, Ali jump in. I was gonna say we have Ali joining us, who's involved in this, who's involved in the youth, engagement in our community. Ali, please introduce yourself, and you can answer the question as well. The question was pertaining to the community and cultural stigma about youth incarceration when they go into the system. How are they viewed?
I'm sorry guys, I was just on the meeting for actually the equity and committee for recommendations on the Portland police. So I'm just jumping right. Actually, this is perfect conversation. The overall superstition stigma surrounding incarceration. Well, I mean, we have to look at it like, well, who's Black, BIPOC people that are in Maine. It's not African Americans, it's Africans. And Africans that come over here from third world countries already have their own trauma and their own, disadvantages that make them second class citizens technically. And, they're either trying to overwork and, it's what is it, 2 counties that could in the whole country where you could work a minimum wage job at full time and afford 2-bedroom house, and this is not one of the counties, so you must be working multiple jobs, and now the kids are facing systemic racism and whatnot. So, and knowing that every race commits crime at the same rate, and the issues that happen to Black folks it's only a response, and then the incarceration happens, and obviously the bias and all that. But I think the worst thing is recovering. That's the hardest part. It's like the stuff could happen, right? It happens, but the recovering is impossible. It's not about that act. That act took 5 or 6 minutes. That act could have been fighting. That act could have been having a mental breakdown. That act could have been even using drugs or selling drugs. It took 5 minutes. But the process of getting arrested, going to court, getting the lawyer, defending yourself, going to jail, bailing yourself out, coming back to court, missing school, still have to do all these same process that everybody has to do in a regular life, have a criminal record, either do a year or 2 years, like that whole, your mind being incarcerated for so long, it's nearly impossible. As Joseph Jackson would say, he did 20 years in prison. He said, you have to be a Superman to come out and survive. You have to be a Superman, right? And we're doing this to kids, right? We're doing this to kids with 44% recidivism rate. So then that happens to the adult system. But nobody's looking at the percentages of kids that are dying from overdose and getting into bad relationships and whatnot. It's unimaginable. It's not talked about. This summer was 4 that we personally knew from the ages of 20 to 29 that we had to bury. One of them even shot himself. He didn't mean to. He didn't even mean to shoot himself. It was just drinking. He was drinking heavily, and he was playing with a gun. He shot himself in the neck. And these things are they're not talked about. But as soon as someone drowns in a pond or something, this person is white person's on the news. But we're not talked about. It's like the value of a person of color is not valued at all. But I could keep going, but I'll stop right there and just let somebody else.
Thank you, Ali. I guess we kind of answered this question as well. Why are we seeing more Black youth compared to other races incarcerated?
Yeah.
Did you guys get my question?
One more question. One more time? Can you say it again?
Oh, did I say it?
Yeah, can you repeat that?
Okay. Why are we seeing more Black youth compared to other races incarcerated?
Because we live in America.
You had to be that one.
Systemic racism. There's nothing else to it. It came out. There was a study made after a Boston judge, a federal judge asked Harvard University, why are there more Black people in the system? And after doing so much research, and this came out, I think September of 2020, they said our final point is systemic racism. That's literally it. It's no other reason. And that's just how you have to live the life of a black body, or literally listen to their lives growing up and how they were interacted from 5th grade through from middle school, how like everybody here feels it, right? And some people just react differently because they don't know how to react.
Yeah, 100%. Especially like when you see on TV, like when you think about like criminals and like what you see, like how they portray like our race in general, it's really hard to ever get past that, especially because after you have so many years of it. Like, and it's sad, like when I'm a kid, like, my dad is telling me like, you're never going to get looked at like someone else, you know what I'm saying? Like, make sure you don't go into this, a store with a hoodie on, don't do that because, you're already on camera, people are going to look, don't put your hands in your pockets, just like things I had to learn at like, 9, 10, that I feel like kids not of color, like never have to go through, like they don't think about those things when they walk into a store, like, oh, like I can't even have a hoodie on because like I might be a target. But yeah.
Yeah, going off what Brandon just said, like again, for me, when I would go visit my father, I'd be like looking out the window or something like that, and he'd be like, "Don't stare at them like that." And it's like, "Why?" And he goes, "Because you don't know what they're gonna do to you." And it's like, but we're in the car, and so, or like me at a young age, I was like, "Wait, I shouldn't do this and I shouldn't do that." And like if I walk into a store with my hood up and my hands in my pockets, like what's gonna happen? Like, oh, you and your brother look so similar. Are you twins? Are you this? Are you that? And it's like, no, I don't know. Like, what? I don't have to tell you, do I? But so like, I grew up in northern Maine, and I didn't directly experience anything like that, but I grew up being like painfully aware of it almost, and it's hard for sure. If anyone else has anything to add, please feel free.
I
Yeah,
think again, I'm not never even took one single psych class, but I do want to say that I think a lot of this is very much conditional, like very much environmental based, as well as just all the training that these individuals are getting. I will be the never seen officers get trained. However, I think we've seen enough of them interacting with civilians to know that they don't get the adequate or the necessary and very much needed training to deal with a lot of young individuals that might have had past trauma and things that they haven't gotten help for. So that on that note, I think there is very, very much steeped and even on a level that I think a lot this country is not willing to, or probably will never have the interest to really go in depth with in terms of psychologically to figure out exactly where these things stem from. And often we throw the word systematic racism around, but I don't know if we even do enough to actually unpack that too. What does that even mean, right? I think we all have an idea, and we all have sort of experience we can relate to what we are saying when we say systematic racism. But I think we owe it to a lot of youth who are serving time, well, a lot of adults who are serving time, to actually unpack that and see where it leads us.
This is Amran. I think the reason Black people are incarcerated at a much higher rate is both political and economic. Politically, they're both racially profiling them, and racial inequality is a system embedded into social dynamics of our system. And economically, many of these youths don't have the funds or resources to protect themselves against a system that both targets and benefits from them financially. And prison as a whole is a corporation that basically grows from their suffering.
And just to be clear, I mean, you said something about the training. I think cops only get like 840 hours worth of training compared to like barbers, which is like 1,200. Like a barber, just on your hair in particular, until they figure out everything. And police officers deal with everything, and which they're not supposed to. But it's probably another reason.
Yeah, so we value like we value haircuts more than we value like the lives of human people. That's crazy to think about.
We also have the most police officers in the world by rate.
Yeah, but like also like a lot of the training is also more physical than like actual training on like how to deal with people. It's more of like, okay, how fast can you run? How many push-ups can you do in like this amount of time? And like how can you hold your gun, rather than we did more pepper sprays like to the eyes than we did actual, like, how do you deal with somebody? What do you do at a traffic stop? It's more of like you learn on your own how to stop somebody at a traffic stop, and you build your own judgment initially based on what other officers have done. And a lot of times that is very iffy, and nobody really cares about that. And it's just very, I'm sorry, messed up. Yeah.
To add to that, I have a friend who spent time at Long Creek, and they told me that just straight up the black kids were treated more poorly than the white kids. Like, they didn't care if you came from this or you didn't have a history. Like, if you have never hurt anyone before, you've never done any or school misconduct, like anything like that, you've just been kind of in the shadows, I guess. You get in there and they don't care where you come from, what you did, and they don't treat you fairly. And that's, I mean, I'm not speaking from experience, I will put that out there, but I've been told by more than one person that it's just straight up not fair, and that sucks.
I'll speak from experience, 18 months inside of Long Creek myself. That's 100% true. Like, I mean, I'm not like blatantly racist. It's not like you know, the people, the youth were blatantly racist, you know, and then we had that division. It was black table and white table. It was literally like that. And it had to be like that. But even though a lot of people had friends in between and whatnot, when a black kid does something, it's over. Like, like everything is shut down for the whole black community. The hardest part is getting out early, and they tend to keep black people longer than their white counterparts.
And it tended to bring it back to like the beginning of the situation, I guess, the process. The black colored youth aren't always brought in fairly. Like, if they need an interpreter, they might not get one in their initial confrontation with the law enforcement or whoever is there to speak with them. They don't necessarily know what they're being spoken to about. They might not have been read their rights. They may have been, but they might not understand them. And it's yeah, I don't know. Again, I've never experienced it, but from what I've heard, it sounds pretty horrible.
Wasn't there a kid that just died in the Lewiston Androscoggin jail, and they said they couldn't figure out why he just died. He's probably like years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
What if that was a white kid? How would the state react? 21-year-old white kid just died, and you know, couldn't figure anything out. Why?
Good question. I think it would be way more publicized. It would be, they would go to the ends of the earth to find out why or what happened to him, or to blame someone else or something that was tangible, I guess.
You know, one thing about just being black that people don't really even talk about, you got to buy your freedom. You have to buy your freedom. You got to work hard. You got to prove yourself. You have to, you know, get a degree. You have to show up. Like, they literally point out what in 2013 but we don't have that for police officers. We don't have that for people in city government. We don't have that just to start, but they sit there and look at what you've done, but never look at the positive and highlight it. So you literally have to buy your freedom.
Yeah, that's why I always argue for longer training. Like, you have to earn to be a police officer. Then they will appreciate being a police officer. Rather than just going into the force with 9 months of training. That's too short a time. They don't have the experience. They did not study the culture. They did not study the community they're going to be, you know, become a police officer of. So that's why we always go back to, you know, we had the, you know, discussion about defund the police. We don't mean, no, completely get rid of the police, but provide them more training. Give them, you know, make sure they earn to become a police officer, and not just get the you know, badge like that. and that's why they're not afraid of losing it, because the whole government is behind them, and that's one of the reasons why when it's a minority versus the police, the whole government is backing up the police, and not nobody's backing up that minority person or that black person, and that's why they get away with it.
Yeah, kind of to add to that again, like the training aspect, in my opinion, there should be some form of mental health training, I guess, for lack of better words. Like these kids can be in there with maybe some form of an adjustment disorder from moving here, there, and everywhere, or a parent got divorced or whatever, or they already have anxiety or they already have depression, but no one knows that because they committed this crime, and that's what they did. They committed the crime, and I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, they did it, but maybe it wasn't like if you don't have a clear mind, you don't always know what you're doing. So I think that people need to be more aware of that aspect of things too. Like some of these kids can be like, oh my gosh, he's crazy, how would he or she ever do that to someone? It's like, well, this kid isn't crazy, there's no psychosis behind there's no mental illness behind that. It just happened. And yeah, I think that's not always taken into consideration.
Basically, our skin color becomes a weapon to them.
There's two stories that I can tell you guys real quick of two kids that I was incarcerated with. There was only like 6 or 7 black people that were in Pine Unit at the time, so you could count literally on your hands. I was one of them. Another one was Zemo. Another person was Adam Fakhraldeen. Adam Fakhraldeen died this summer. Also, he overdosed on Percocets. And Adam was a good kid. He was nice at basketball. He was part of the basketball team for Long Creek. He never spoke. You only hear him speak maybe 2 sentences. And so he was also he was a performer and everything. The other person is Mohammed Roon. He's from Lewiston, Maine. And Mohammed Roon was he was a good dude. He was a little bad, he liked to mess around with people a lot. But when he after he got out, he had 2 kids. He was part of Maine Inside Out, performing and also doing a lot of activism work. When he came home, I tell the story a lot. His parents were his kids were taken away by the HHS, so he went out and decided to drink and take some pills and also overdosed. So these stories like we could talk about it like it's away from us, but it's like literally around our its prevalence, right around the corner from us. These are the results of what happened by the system.
I also think policy plays a vital role because there's these discriminatory laws, and it doesn't matter the mechanism of the crime that the person commits. These policies and legislation are intended for economically disadvantaged Black men and women who are more likely to go to prison for them to stay in prison, and there's few social programs to help them go back into society, because these young incarcerated youth from low-ended education and poorly funded schools come back from prison and they find themselves struggling to find employment, and it just becomes a vicious cycle.
So yeah, I don't know if any of you have ever seen like Shawshank Redemption, but that kind of reminds me of that movie, like how hard it is to come back from being in prison and like putting yourself back into daily life. Like my uncle just got out of jail for 10 years from like drug charges, and like he was telling me like how difficult it is just to get a chance, and even though he's been incarcerated and he's like made something of himself, he's gotten a degree while he's been in jail and things like that, like the world still won't give him a chance. So it's just tough to see like people who can fall in that cycle at such an early age, who can go to jail at 18, and be there for 3 years and violate probation and get another 3 years, and then they're 27, almost 30 years old, and like they can't function on their own because they're never going to get that chance to get out of it.
And we all know the history of the system, how police were made, why drugs were there. Like it's literally, it's just walking through a line. You know how there was lines of, going to the gas chamber when we talk about like the Hitler and the Jews at the time. It's literally just that same line going through what was happening to Black people. People don't really talk about it. That's it. It's not publicized.
Yeah, and Abbas, go ahead.
Now you can go.
I was just going to kind of add on top of what was already being said, like people are out here trying to provide for themselves, their families, their friends, what have you, and they end up in jail, and maybe they were going to get groceries and like they're not back yet, they're not answering their phone, and you don't get a call telling you that they are locked up until the next day.
That's why like projects, low income housing, all these secluded communities are created to make these minority groups stand out. And that's how, once, they started the history of the drugs and, introduced all that, they secluded these communities, especially, the Black communities, to patrol them, to arrest them, and all that. So it starts from a young age, and it's very hard to escape it. Just because of our skin, the skin of our color. So going based on that, we'll go on and to ask, what do you want to see for change? I know that we always talk about change this. Where do you want to see change? What do you want to see changed? And are there any petitions or changes that is going on that you may want to share?
Where do you see change, you said?
What do you want to see like changed in the community, in the laws, basically, what do you want to see changed when you think about youth incarceration? I mean, you work in that. That's your daily job. Every day, you work towards change. So what are you working on? Is there any, project that you're working on that you want to share and stuff like that?
I see some of the people that I actually work with right on the attendees list. I wish they were here so they could speak about. There's recommendations that we have, but I want to hear from the people that are on the panelists. Recommendations for.
So I mean, this is kind of like another question, I guess, but if people, like, where do people get their facts from? Like where, like, oh, this happens at Long Creek. Long Creek is an education center, or Androscoggin County Jail does this, or Aroostook County Jail does this. It's like, okay, but who told you that? Or did you see it on their website? Or did you talk to someone who's been there? Or maybe not. And so that it could lead us to, what do you want to see for change? Because like you're hearing all these facts, but maybe they're not factual at all. So
I don't think we take enough time to really understand and actually evaluate how power works, particularly just because we're talking about the juvenile system right now. So I'm just going to focus on that. Like, who is actually doing what and where and why, right? So I think we actually, again, we didn't get the chance to really even touch on this. The DA office, The amount of power that those individuals in the Cupid have is insane. They have complete discretion to do whatever they want with any case that comes through that door. Any case, I tell you. Like, I've seen it with my own eyes. A girl who should have gotten jail time just got her daddy shook the DA's hand because he was a former prosecutor, and she got away with it. So, with those kind of things, makes you sick, knowing that exactly a young Black person just about to serve time because for something that was a lot less than that, and she was drunk driving. So those kind of things, you see it when you see it happening in front of your eyes, it makes you sick and makes you realize like there's some serious power exchange happening that we're not aware of. So to that note, I think first and foremost, every one of us, whether you be involved in this work or otherwise, like we need to actually realize who's doing the work behind the scene. Who are these people? Who do they answer to? Who does people like in District 3 Andy answer to? He answers to the commissioner. And who does the commissioner answer to? If you can't answer these questions, you can't make any changes. You really can't. It doesn't matter how much you chant. It doesn't matter how much you protest. It, you have to know who has control. Then you're able to actually challenge them, whether it be because you start running for office, you prepare yourself to go to law school and you become the DA, the next DA, you run to become a mayor, you become a city council, whatever it is. How do you challenge these individuals so they don't continuously use their power for whoever they want, for whatever they want? So I just, that's just my recommendation. I'm gonna stop ranting because if I go any further, oh boy.
I mean, I agree with what Mana and both Ali said. And like, I'd say educate the people that are like part of the community as well. But then to say to educate them, they'd actually have to listen and they'd actually have to understand. And that's hard to do when there is people that really could care less, that really are judgmental and very, sorry, sadistic in certain senses. And to like get through to such people, I'd say there really is going to be a lot of work that needs to be done. And people like Ali and like so many other people that are working with these youth that are constantly there for them, I'd say in what they're doing right now is great. And like to continue like opening more doors for them and like constantly talking to like the community initially. And the other thing is having the ability to actually go into criminal justice classes where these classes are being provided to students like me who will constantly have to think about my future as a police officer or whatever. And if there is at least people that come to us that talk to us about, okay, this is what the youth are going through. This is what incarceration, like the whole criminal justice system is, to actually get a different point of view and to see how the systems are made and how the systems are like how the system is affecting these kids and their families and the community is a lot more important than actually just putting it out there for the community in general. And that's one thing I would say, like to focus mostly on the students who are studying these exact specific classes that are trying to advance their futures and like their jobs into becoming police officers or an FBI agent or so on and so forth, just to focus on them mostly.
I think diverting right now, I mean, so shut down the whole system. That's the only way where this is going to happen. Just shut it down and start a new system of healing, of higher education, of mental health. That's the only option to this. And we've tried every way of reforming a system, and in actuality, what happens is if you reform it too much, it actually becomes stronger. And that's what's happening when you increase the amount to the past 10 years to public safety, and you know, past 10 years crimes have been dropping. You know, so in Portland itself, 16.9% of the stops are for Black people. Right now, there's a diversion program that's starting right now with Class D and Class E misdemeanors that I was super happy about in Cumberland County. But today, right, I heard that there was 21 people that were being diverted, and of those 21 people, 16 were white and three were Black. I was like, check this out, right? I was like, if you're looking at the population of those incarcerated, you have to prioritize people of color when you're doing these diverting. You have to divert them through restorative justice, through higher education, because with higher education, 6% of people with bachelor degrees actually go back to jail with recidivism rates, and then 1% of people with master degrees. So if you divert the youth that are troubled or whatever to higher education, they're not going to go back to jail. You feel me? Like, so there's so many different options, and even right now, like, looking at there's bills coming out. Victoria Morales is putting a bill in. Charlotte Warren is putting a bill in to deduct $5 million from the $18.2 million from Long Creek, and Victoria Morales is going to put a bill in to higher the age up to 25. And we were just discussing with her today to make sure that equity is on there, race and equity is on there by prioritizing BIPOC individuals. So there's a lot of work that people could do, but I would say stop hitting up the city councilors. Only hit up your mayor. Hit up the people literally like in power. Hit up the AG. Like, yo, what are you doing? Like, we need to do this. Look at I need the data, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's already been said tonight or not, but there's about $18 million that goes into Long Creek, if I'm correct. And so, like you just said, that like if we want to start somewhere, there's some money there, there's potential there, there's already officers there that can be trained better. I don't know. I don't work in that environment. I'm a college student, but yeah, those are just that's something that I know. It's like what for what, I guess, is my question. And so yeah, I would definitely like to see a more mental health focused reform, I guess. I don't know. It's tough for sure.
Any other questions?
I think we covered all of the questions that we had. If there's any final thoughts that you guys would like to add on, please feel free to. Yeah, thank you, Jessica. That's one of the steps. All right, awesome. Yeah, so now we'll open up to the attendees to ask any questions they have for the panelists. You can put it in the chat if you want to, or you can request it to be to speak, or raise your hand. Okay. All right, we have a question from Danielle. What else can people do to help get involved and support incarcerated youth? Well, there's like 4 questions. So let's answer that question. Let's open to the panel. Yes, and the questions are also in the chat. Feel free to answer any of the questions, but yeah. I mean, I can't start. I already mentioned in the chat. I mentioned that limiting prison, no prison, more counselors, more community support, more community programs for the youth, especially those involved who get stuck in the cycle of drugs and gangs. Helping them with having the resources for the community and stuff like that. So those are some of the things that we also talked about a couple of times. I've used a couple of discussions, but Ali, go ahead if you want to say anything.
There's I wanted to see if anybody else could get into that one, because I could come into it. What do you guys think the more recommendations specifically for youth, youth of color? It doesn't even have to be incarceration. It could be any of the because there's a lot of youth that don't even get incarcerated, but they still have the issues.
I would say that I'd like to see better child welfare systems, kind of to support and protect these children, especially children who have parents or one parent that is incarcerated, just to make sure that they don't follow their parents into prison, and just kind of under these circumstances, the inequalities of mass incarceration, we kind of have to look at their lives over their entire lifetime, not just the first few generations of their life, just kind of set these systems in place where they do have that counseling. Like I said, like if they have one parent that is incarcerated, that's kind of difficult to grow up with and get through. So if they have that counseling or like that opportunity to speak with someone, and someone just kind of mentioned it, to have more counselors in schools versus officers in schools, where they kind of have more of a chance to speak about their experiences or what they're going through, who they're around, and just kind of improve the entire child welfare system overall, just to make sure it doesn't undermine the family life, but instead support the family life and just give them a more developmental path into success.
Yeah, for sure. To add on to that, I read in an article, it said the help that he needs is using words for problem solving. And so like a lot of these youth are incarcerated based on actions, right? And so they don't know who they can trust or what to trust or whatever. And so then they're left with this feeling of they don't know. And so I don't know, they should use, like, I don't know what the word is, resources. We need more resources to help these kids focus better mentally. Like they need to know that, okay, yeah, you messed up when you were 15, 16, maybe you were 10, but now you're 18 or you're 20 or you're 24 and you're out. So let's keep it that way. I mean, yeah, it's still going to weigh on you and you're still going to think about it, and rightfully so, but we need more help like after the fact. They need more rehabilitation resources after they are incarcerated, in my opinion.
I think this, oh, can go after. I think this kind of goes with the family welfare. I think just ensuring that family do actually, or children welfare, I think what family welfare is also just up there. And in terms of, I can only speak to what I see and notice around here, meaning Lewiston and just within my neighboring here. And family often get very ostracized, not just the kid or not just the person who did something or perceived to have done something bad, but again, with the whole moral purity, people don't like anything that they perceive to be tainted or perceive to be bad. So a family often get ostracized, and that means that they close the doors, they close themselves from everybody else. They don't ask for as much help because they don't want information getting out. They don't really have anybody to confide in because again, they're afraid of what somebody's going to say. And again, within the, like, again, I can only speak to the community I directly see and hear from, which is the Somali community. Reputation is incredibly important. Reputation is everything. It precedes even sometimes our own faith, honestly. So reputation is protected at any cost, even that meaning ignoring when your child needs help. I know that sounds insane, but it does happen. So I think actually providing the necessary resources to families so they don't feel that burden by themselves. A lot of the time we have moms who have 6, 7, 8 kids by themselves. One falling behind, it's horrible for me to say this, but they probably aren't getting the attention that they need, and they're going to keep falling behind because she has 7 others to take care of, 8 others to take care of. So often really just giving that necessary attention to that family, and often it will do wonders. So just really family resources is also, it's not something we often talk about, but I hope it becomes more and more conversation thing. You can go, Ali. Thanks.
I think one of the biggest things is to tell the youth to forgive themselves, right? Because we always feel like the kids are always doing something bad. You need to tell them, yo, you did nothing bad. This is not your fault. You just reacted to a situation. If everything was good in your life, then then you wouldn't have anything like that. So we need to stop blaming kids as if there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them. And there's just three different ways of getting into the work. There's direct service of like face-to-face mental health. There's that type of services like the safety net. There's campaigning, like building numbers. We're doing right now is what everyone's doing is campaigning. And then there's advocacy. In particular, advocacy is like talking to lawmakers, legislators, advocating for a particular youth, saying this kid is not bad. Like we need standing with them in the court, visiting them inside, and whatnot. Like they said, $18.5 million, and with 23 kids are inside of Long Creek with $18.5 million going through there. 23 kids out of the state, $18 million. And $32 million, guys, write this down. $32 million for the juvenile justice system that we're spending on. $32 million that can be reinvested into positive things. So.
Kind of to add on what Mana said about family situations with mothers, I have been in contact with a few mothers in the Biddeford region where I go to school, and they do have lots of kids that they need to take care of, and maybe they just had another baby, and you have a kid in high school and a kid in elementary school and a kid in middle school, and yes, this one knows English a little bit better than this one, so maybe he or she can help the little ones, but the older one has their own homework to do, and so it's like, okay, you have one mom and maybe the father is there, or maybe he's out working because that's what they do, and it's these kids are kind of left to their own devices, and it's sad, but it happens, and they definitely need all the help they can get, and they need to not feel like anything they do is wrong, like what was already said. They need to be reassured often, and people need to take the time to do that.
Awesome. That was a very important and engaging discussion we had today. We'll be wrapping up very soon. So if anybody has any remarks we want to say, any last, statements you want to say, feel free to say that. But we'll be wrapping up very soon. And thank you guys so much for attending this important discussion. We hope that the conversation goes on and people learn and hope to see some, positive actions or positive outcomes from here. I don't know if there's a question. I don't know if there's a question, Brandon. Are you asking a question?
No, it was an accident. Right. Yeah, it was an accident. My fault. Yeah.
Nah, that's fine. No worries.
Just get final remarks from everyone.
Yeah.
I think I'll start. That's fine. I think it's just important, whether it is youth post incarceration or before incarceration, kind of picking up off what has recently just been said, is to remind that these kids that they have a future, regardless of what has happened in their lives. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very important to, whether it's their parents who who were at fault for whatever situations they've been put in, or even the kids. There's so much more life to live. You know what I'm saying? So like, just pushing that upon people who have been in those situations, I think is huge, because just knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel can be very refreshing for people. And so as long as, we, can do our part to advocate that to people in those specific situations, I think we're
creating a better future as we speak. So.
Thank you, Brandon.
I guess I'll go next. I agree with what Brandon was saying. Like, giving these kids hope that there is, like, that they can change, like that their past isn't really who they are, and that was just, you know, like, obviously it is who they are, that's part of them, but whatever had happened can be something that can educate them, that they can use as a positive thing in the future and something to push them forward initially. And that educating the parents that yes, your child did wrong, yes, your child did something maybe that they even regret, like that they even regret, and like that maybe even what they did was very traumatizing to them. But no matter what, as a parent, you should be supportive of that. No matter what, as a parent, as a family member, as a friend, whatever, you should understand what they did is something that happened in the past. That you shouldn't constantly bring it up and put them down with it and antagonize them and make them feel like they're useless and initially not even worth it. So yeah.
Thank you. I completely agree. Does anyone else want to say anything?
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Abbas and everybody else who is hosting this, who is having this series and very much needed. And hopefully, I want to say in the next 20 years we won't have this conversation, but knowing how America moves, we probably will. So but I do want to say thank you to everybody for wonderful inputs and to just really, again, I can never emphasize enough to really know the power that we do hold ourselves, but also the power of the people who are in position hold. So really taking the time, these things are boring. They leave you with fatigue. They're emotionally exhausting, but I promise you it's worth it. And there's somebody, I know 4 to 5 people who have served who often struggle. So and to really hear their strength and to really take that from them really does um, it gives me the strength to actually try as much as I can to know more about the system, to project to my power, to project as much as I can, to ask questions where there seems to be silence, right? So I really do encourage, especially those of you in college, you have immense power to really do some serious damage while you're still there, even, right? So really asking questions, pushing your professors, pushing whoever within your circle to asking some difficult questions, and hopefully it can lead to you could be the reason why a lot of things change. So thank you again, and I hope that you get to see the change that we want to see. And stay safe out there. It's crazy.
Thank you.
I think the last thing I would say is for everybody that's speaking and whoever's listening, know your worth. Like, know your worth being a person of color. Like, there's more money. There's different ways to make money in this country, and like not only the streets or just that. Like, there's things that we're not taught, and once you find that shit out, like, you're like, I could have done this the whole time, and as long as you just keep fighting for that, and you put yourself at a high value, people start treating you that way. So just fight the systemic mentalities that has been embedded in us, and be powerful.
Okay, if no one else has anything to say, then I guess that is it. I want to offer one last big thank you to everyone for coming and being here with us this evening. It means a lot to me, and I am probably speaking on behalf of a lot of other people too, and it means a lot. So yeah, thank you. Thank everyone.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time of your busy schedules, and also stay safe. It's crazy out there. So yeah, take care.